must be honest. I think in the summer when Arsenal signed him, and I had my Liverpool hat on, and I looked at the signings Arsenal made, and besides Gyökeres, it felt like a lot of them were to strengthen the squad, really. So where Arsenal had problems the year before was when Saka was out, so they bought Madueke. Odegaard was out, they got Eze. One of the centre-backs was missing, so they got a couple of centre-backs. It was only really Gyökeres who felt like he was going to go into the team. And if I'm being honest, I think if Havertz was 100% fit, Havertz would probably be the centre-forward in this team, I think. So when Eze came, I thought, OK, maybe it's not a game changer. And Les knows him a lot better than me. He still said earlier on the show, there's still more to come. But then we've still seen some of his highlights this season. There were still a few great goals in there. And then he goes and scores a hat-trick. So apologies. I think I've certainly undervalued the importance that signing was, because he looks like he could make the real difference for Arsenal this season and go on and win the title.
And apart from the sort of skill in scoring the goals and his overall contribution to the game, the composure, Thierry, was admirable from Eze.
Well, if you looked at Palace before, you would have seen that composure. You know he has that composure. He's calm. The way he speaks is the same way. But what I like with him is the way he, in the game today, he finds a way to be in and around the box, especially on one of the goals. You will see he pulls away from everybody to make sure he can have time to execute, and we all know he can finish. I know he's with us now, but when you look at him at Palace and the way they reposition him under Mateta, suddenly, as a 10, he started to see the game a different way with a guy that can play for him. And obviously today was different because he didn't have a proper 9 with him. But that's why I think it was easier for him to get in the box today, because he didn't have the presence of a 9. He was a 9 at times.
Yeah, there was nobody getting in his way. It was him, and he took the goals so well, Les.
Yeah, he did. The first one we see here just gets himself into the position as he says, Timber does really well here, goes into the gap, crosses it. This is not a great clearance from Danso, but here shows his foot movement and then strikes the ball lovely.
VAR did have a look at the Arsenal players. There's a few of them offside here, and whether or not they were in Vicario's eye line. I mean, I feel like the decision, we should look at every decision individually, but I feel like this would be a bigger talking point if this had been a narrow 1-0 victory.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way you can't look at this and say they don't impede his eyesight. You look at it here, look, there's no way that doesn't impede his eyesight, but, when up in VAR, there's someone else up there and doesn't think it does. I don't see how not.
But if you go back to that goal, is Zubimendi making a run.
Yeah, look.
And your number 10 shooting, look at them. You have no 9s. So that's why all that talk all the time that, yes, you need a 9, like you need a goalkeeper to play football, but it doesn't mean that if you don't have a 9, you can't score. As it's been shown there, is Zubimendi making a run in behind first?
Yeah, and as we saw there, Vicario saying that he couldn't see. He was saying he was unsighted. That made it 2-0 to Arsenal, and then Eze got the second, his second and Arsenal's third.
Yeah, just after half-time again, and again very similar. This kept happening a lot through the game, where Arsenal had outnumber Spurs on that right side, and they'd play it inside, drag the two central midfield players over the side of the pitch. Bentancur, Palhinha, nowhere to be seen on the edge of the box. And listen, it's a wonderful finish. Of course it is from Eze, but this happened continually in the first half. And this is a problem with the system that they played. The space is always on the outside of the two central midfield players. And I'm sure that's something that Arsenal would have spoken about before the game. And it's worked an absolute treat.
Look at the position again of Eze. At the very beginning, he's your 9. And you know who frees him? The run of Declan Rice. Again, your holding midfielder. If he doesn't make that run, he's intelligent enough to know that he has to go the other way to pull away and then to finish. But he's the 9 at the very beginning, once again.
That's his left foot, his right. His first one with his right foot, that with his left foot, and that was equally as good a finish as the first one on his right foot.
He said in his interview with Pat that he prayed for a hat-trick, and that was it. The first hat-trick in a North London derby since December the 23rd, 1978.
That was a lot of prayers, I guess, because, since 78, no one has done that before. You have a lot of great guys that have played in that derby. When you think of guys like the late one, Kane, myself, Ian Wright, I can name a lot of strikers. People will be upset and I forgot some, but it's actually number 10. But for me, on the night, look at where he is. That's your 9.
But I think that's a really interesting point. And it comes back to something that you were saying, I think, across the course of last season and even across the summer, Jamie, which is that a number 9 wasn't necessarily the answer to Arsenal's problems. It was about creating chances elsewhere on the pitch.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I never felt... There was always this thought they needed a goal scorer. Of course, they needed to score more goals, certainly last season, to compete with Liverpool. But Arsenal in general play didn't create enough. That was a problem for them last season. So no matter who your striker is, if you're not creating chances for him, he's not there to finish. But he's made a difference with that. And even this season, when we go back to very early on, if you go back to the game at Anfield, that was almost like the Arsenal of last season. Very strong defensively, but not really looking like scoring, going forward. And I don't know if can't remember exactly. But was Newcastle the next game after that? Or I think Eze came in basically rather than. There's a lot of criticism around Merino playing, I think, at Anfield instead of Eze. Eze comes on late into the game, and then I'm certain Eze plays at Newcastle away, and you just felt like there was a difference. Yeah. And it just feels like his introduction, his sign, which I felt, to be fair, would just be something that would be to sort of back up Odegaard. Odegaard's out at the moment. But as you said before, Odegaard's got a real fight.
And you know that I thought differently. I said to myself, first and foremost, he's a 10, and Martin Odegaard will have competition. And when you're at a big club, as it should be, you would have competition. In your time, in my time, if you have an hour. If you don't score, Kanu comes on, Wilton comes on. At the very beginning, I had to find a space to make sure that I could make myself available and make sure that I could perform for the team. But like I said, for me, he's a 10, and I say it again.
How much in terms of that Arsenal overall performance, I mean, how impressive was it, given that we will come to the opposition that Spurs put up later on in the show?
I like the combination of, and I mean, it's an obvious one, people will say that, but Bukayo Saka and Timber, the way they attack and they defend together, it's second to none. Everything came from the right and ended up going to Eze or to Leandro Trossard. Everything goes there. And the way they do defend also together, their activity. It's like when you see one, you see the other one. Regardless of where they are on the field, that combination is lethal.
With those additions to the Arsenal squad in the summer, it was sort of expected that Leandro Trossard would be playing a sort of slightly reduced role, and yet that's 8 starts in a row for him. And I know there are injuries in that Arsenal squad and players who've been unavailable, but he scored big goals in that time.
He has, and whenever I looked at Arsenal, I always felt left wing was a real weak area for them. Whether it was sort of Martinelli or Trossard, I never quite felt they were at the standard in terms of winning the league. I actually thought Eze may play a lot of football there, one of the reasons why he came in, but he's been absolutely brilliant. And you know what, he's been really good ever since he came to the club. I think he came in January a couple of years ago, and he's always been that type of player. Got your goals. I think Gary mentioned in commentary, I mean, you look at that space again in the middle of the pitch. I think Gary mentioned in commentary that run that Freddie Ljungberg would make. And again, Freddie Ljungberg was the type of player who wasn't someone amazing with the ball, but it was the penetrating runs, it was what he did off the ball. And he basically, I think a few years ago with you, Thierry, won you a title with so many vital goals.
He did. The 2002.
And he's doing something similar this season.
You'd have liked that ball from Marino, though, wouldn't you?
Oh, that's for sure. You know, but we go back to the attacking point of view is outstanding. Marino turning, seeing, Trossard finishing, obviously little deflection. But I mean, if you let a player of that quality like Marino turn around in the stadium and then just pick someone just like that and allow someone to run, that's what he was talking about like how embarrassing the performance of Tottenham was. But you know, I'm not complaining.
Well, I know you've already seen that incident, but I just wondered what you made of that interview, Les.
I think he did the same thing against Chelsea. Was it Chelsea? He came out and he was the one that apologised for the performance. And you know, when they came here today, 5 at the back, you look at it and you think to yourself, OK, if you can perform like you performed against PSG, because we saw that, and they had a go. It wasn't a negative 5 at the back. It was a front foot. We're going to go and have a go. We're going to go and press people. They came here and they just sat back and allowed Arsenal to come after wave after wave after wave of attack. And like I said, Arsenal didn't even get out of third gear. Let's not say this was a 5-star performance. The scoreline's 5-star, but it weren't a 5-star performance from Arsenal. They didn't have to. It was in third gear and there was no fight, there was no bite. This is North London, but you're expecting a little bit of spark, you're expecting a little bit of something. And we spoke about it at the start. We said, you know, Arsenal have got 3 players who've never played in North London derby before. Tottenham probably had 1. But there was nothing. there was nothing. You know, we started to start the show saying, you know, at the start of the week I was thinking about this game. Nothing that those players did out there felt like a North London derby to me.
Jamie, does it make a difference that they changed the setup, or is it the way that the players performed within that structure?
I wouldn't look at the actual playing five at the back so much. I think the one negative so far under Thomas Frank is, can he go from being a pragmatic coach and making it difficult for the opposition, as he's tried to do here? It hasn't worked. Let's never forget, Arsenal are a fantastic team, and Tottenham's record here is horrendous, no matter who the manager is, no matter who the Arsenal team is. It's more that you're thinking, how are they going to score a goal? How are they going to win the game? Now, away from home, they've scored a lot of goals this season, the most in the Premier League. But again, I keep going back to the underlying numbers, and some people don't like it. You know, chances created or their XG. It's very low and it's very poor. And they've had to score an absolute, probably one of the goals of the season. And that was the only thing that happened in the game. And sometimes we've all played in games like that, where you go away from home to a tough place, you don't create nothing. But you could, even after watching the first 5 minutes of that game, I think you're probably looking at it thinking, how are Tottenham going to, what are they going to do here? What's the plan to actually hurt Arsenal? And that has not just been in this game. It's not a one-off that. I watched them against Chelsea when Vicario came out and apologised again. Didn't look like scoring a goal in the game. And that is the problem for every manager who goes from a team like Brentford with Thomas Frank, and we all love him, he does fantastic, then making that jump to a top team. You've got to have more than just trying to stop the opposition. And that's not having a go with Thomas Frank. What I'm saying is the managers who manage at the top and win the biggest trophies, they're there for the reason. They're the best, they're elite, they're special. And the reason they are special is because they can coach teams to be difficult to beat at times, but they can also coach teams to go and win games. And that is the big difference between, you know, managers at a good level in the Premier League and managers who want to manage at the top level. And if you don't get that right, you're not going to be in a job that long.
Can I just add, just the early signs for Thomas Frank were really good. Because when he first went in, and like I said, the game against PSG, the game against Man City,
but isn't that playing to his strength? So he's playing against a team who are probably better than his team, and he's going to make it difficult for them. He's tried to do that today, and it hasn't worked. They get that.
But those two games, I still felt Tottenham tried to have a go. Today, I just didn't feel like they tried to have a go at all. And I don't know what the change of mentality is there.
For me to go back to the game, I know you guys passed a bit of the point that I want to make, but it's not the back five that shocked me. Yeah. It's the 2-3. If the two guys on the outside of your 9 do not work well to stop that ball on the outside of your 2 6s, Palhinha and Bentancur, as we saw that Merino arrived there, Kudus never went there to help the two holding midfielders. So when they were sliding at the very beginning, there was always space on the right shoulder of Palhinha, on the left shoulder of Bentancur. So the back five, if he stays flat like that and not helping the two in the middle, you're going to suffer. Regardless of what it is, you don't need to have a 9 there. They're going to possess the ball in midfield. That's exactly what happened. They got exposed.
I mean, they don't play that system so often. That is always the fall down of that system. That's what we've been talking about for 12 months with Man United and Ruben Amorim. We're always talking about, when we talk about the back five, we always talk about the two central midfield players. That's the part of that system that will let you down. So in terms of isolation of just today, tactically, yes, that caused them a big problem. But I think the bigger picture for Thomas Frank and Tottenham is he going to be able to, you know, you mentioned before the kick-off, they are missing really good attacking players. We should add that. But the big thing for any manager making that jump is, can he create chances? Can he score goals? Can he go and win games rather than stopping the opposition?
To be fair to him, he did it at City. He went with a back four, put pressure, played high. So that was pretty positive, that one.
Well, Thomas Frank wants to go back and look at that game in more detail. These are the sort of bare numbers from the game itself. 3 shots, 0.07 expected goals, 4 touches in the Arsenal box, 120 passes in the opposition half, and 52 passes in the final third. They average 54 passes in the final third in one half of football, normally Tottenham. So that's, you know, a sort of 50% reduction. But more significantly, just to put it into context, is of the 12 games they played so far this season, these are the lowest numbers. And perhaps a little more surprisingly, over the last 10 seasons, where they played 392 games, so 380 over the 10 seasons, plus the 12 of this season, they're way down towards 392 in all of them. There is an argument that this is the worst creative performance from Tottenham in over 10 years, Les.
Well, yeah, we saw that today. Apart from Richarlison's shot, I don't remember them having another shot at goal. All the stuff he was talking about, I totally agree with it. But the one word is they didn't compete. Didn't compete against Arsenal today. They turned up in North London derby. Whatever derby you turn up in, you know it's going to be hostile. You know it's going to be fierce. Just didn't look like it today. It looked like tiddlywinks. You know, they just didn't compete the whole game. And you know, if you're a Tottenham fan now, you're as frustrated as anything because go there. Okay, you're playing against one we've spoken about. Arguably one of the best team in this league at this moment in time. So what you want to do is just go and compete. You want to go and have a go. You don't want to go there. They laid down today and got rolled over. Absolutely rolled over.
The reason it feels worse is because, as we've both mentioned, the same things were getting said a few weeks ago after Chelsea. That's a big London derby. Then you come here on the back of that, and then it's exactly the same. When you see the ranking terms, it's the worst this season. In some ways, you'd expect Arsenal the best team in the league. You know, so it's always going to be difficult coming here. But what Les is saying there is obviously a Tottenham man. This happened a few weeks ago as well, didn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and that's probably going to make Thomas Frank's job more difficult in terms of winning over the Tottenham fans if those two performances have come against two of their fiercest rivals.
Yeah, but we got to remember, and I said this before, you know, this side finished 17th in the league last year. So, you know, same group of players, barring one or two, finished 17th in the league. So it's not going to turn like, you know, overnight. You know, we had a go at Postecoglou last year saying, like, you know, at least they went on the front foot and tried to have a go. Just couldn't stop things going in the other way. But they didn't do anything today. They didn't have a go. They didn't defend well. They didn't attack well. There's no part of the game today that you could look at and say, well, they had a go here or they had a go there.
And you know what Tottenham fans expect more than anyone. And they do want attacking football. They do want beautiful football. But even if that's not being delivered, the players, and Vicario said this a little bit earlier on, is that there are certain non-negotiables in a game. Did they get them today at least?
Football's never changed, no, and that's what he's talking about. The non-negotiables are that you go somewhere and you compete. Okay, you get beat by a better side, but you go somewhere and you compete. They didn't do that today, and you know that Vicario said that when they played against Chelsea, and you come again against your biggest rivals, and the same thing's being labelled at you, and that's your goalkeeper saying that.
Mm. It's a worrying trend in terms of the two teams that they would be expected to, if not perform well against, that they would be expected to compete against and look like they were playing with an intensity. And he said intensivity there. I'm just chucking extra syllables in. But they would be expected to play with an intensity against Chelsea, against Arsenal, and if that's lacking, that's what's going to sting. Yeah,
I think there were probably slightly two different problems. I was at the Chelsea game as well, and that was the worry there was actually how they were actually going to try and score a goal, and how they can actually play through. Have they got the central midfield players to get on the ball? Have they got the quality? Have they got the courage? Have they got the idea from the manager how they're going to do that? That was definitely lacking there today. That was lacking as well today. But what you'd always expect from a Thomas Frank team, or certainly 9 times out of 10, especially if you're playing a back five, if you've got two hold midfield players who are not great on the ball but are there to stop the opposition, is not to concede goals like they did today, especially right in front of the edge of the box, where you're supposed to have at least 5 players, 3 centre-backs, 2 central midfield players. The space in that position was alarming, and that comes down to, as Thierry's mentioned, actually maybe the system and the problems with that system as well.
That's because I heard him saying that he played in a 5-4-1. I invite you to look at the first goal, 5-2-3, or maybe Kudus. I know the bird didn't understand that they had to go back to the 2 holding midfielders, because at the very beginning, that's exactly where Arsenal were finding the space. Then, yes, I agree, and after 25 minutes, they went to it looked like Odegaard was retreating a bit more, less a bit Kudus, but the space was found on the outside of the 2 holding midfielders so many times in the first half.
There was a goal for Tottenham, and in another game, this would be one of the highlights for them. It came from Richarlison from 35.3 yards. It's the furthest distance a goal's been scored from in a North London derby since Bentley in 2008. Mm-hmm. The Brazilian Kenny McLean in action here.
There we go. Now, as Jamie said, on another day you'd be talking about this as perhaps goal of the season. You know, he's seen the goalkeeper off his line. Paulinho, who's probably the only player today that you could look at and go, do you know what? From start to finish, he had a go. You know, didn't quite go well for him, but he just had a go, and he put himself about. But it's a great finish from Richarlison, but that's not going to do anything for any Tottenham fan, I've got to be honest.
But the other thing with that goal is, as spectacular as it is, it's not showing any pattern of play. It's not showing any kind of numbers that are going to be replicable. Yeah,
and also about winning the ball back. What happened to that? Going out of what everyone said, the tactic of the coach or whatever, your own desire to go and get it. And if you mirror that to Palhinha at the beginning, retreating when Merino is on the ball, allowing him to see and pass that ball to when he goes on someone, gets it, way on the front foot, and then you can score. That didn't happen so many times tonight.
Bayern Munich and then Chelsea to come next in the league. They're second at the moment, but there is a 6-point gap between Arsenal and Chelsea. And historically, any team that has had that cushion after 12 games has gone on to win the league. It's happened to Manchester United, it's happened twice to Chelsea, once to Manchester City and twice to Liverpool. The word inevitable seems to be hanging around Arsenal at the moment. Every other team who's been in this position has gone on to win the league.
Look, now this is not me talking as an Arsenal fan. It is me saying at one point you have to embrace it. People were talking about the process. It's not believing in the process anymore, it's happening. You have to be honest. We put ourselves in a situation where we have, I do believe, the best squad. Did you hear the name of the players that he mentioned just now? They're not playing. Look at how we played. You're not complaining anymore about missing one or two. So you need to make sure that you can win the league. I'm not saying you're going to win it, but you need to act like it. You are favorite. Embrace it. Not know anything. Like we all know it's going to be difficult against Chelsea. We all know we have the game at in midweek against Bayern Munich. But it's time to deliver. And you need to embrace it. It's not me trying to put pressure. It's not. If I was in that dressing room, that's how I would have come back in the summer. I would have said, guys, it's time. Enough of messing around. We need to now put a performance this year where people are going to be scared of us. And that's about it. It's not being cocky. It's not being whatever it is. It is you work for it, right? You suffered from it. Everything that you did this summer is to make sure that you can have two squads. I would say that the two squads that we have, if you maybe change it however you want to change it, can finish. Obviously, the first one, you know what we can do when the guys play. The other one can be in the top 4. This is how good of a squad we have.
I think over the last 3 years, people have almost sort of laughed at Arsenal a little bit about second again. But there's a lot of big clubs in this country. And, I mean, it's not something to turn your nose up at in terms of finish second 3 years. That's not easy in itself. But what Arsenal have done in those 3 years, they've never threw the league away. The first couple of years up against Man City, we all felt Man City were a better team than them. They probably let themselves down a little bit last season, how far off they were from Liverpool. But the only team who can stop Arsenal winning the league is Arsenal. They are the best team. They are the best squad. The only thing that can stop them is their own head, their own mentality. Maybe this crowd getting nervous in March and April. If the league is still up for grabs by then, this would be one. If they didn't win it, I think we'd all point the finger at them and say, you threw this away. I don't think that's ever been the case before. I always think the case has been there has been a team slightly better than them in the Premier League, but that is definitely not the case this season. And there have been moments at this ground late on in the past 3 seasons where it's felt extremely tense here at the Emirates, in games where Arsenal will have felt they had to win to either stay in the title race or maybe just get their noses in front in title races, and that's where they've fallen short. Do they look more relaxed to you? Do they look more so that pressure isn't there in the same way?
Mikel looks more relaxed. The way he's on the bench, he would have his moment, like everyone right on the bench. But sometimes when you're the boss, you don't do it on purpose. But the way you are will have an impact on everyone in the stadium and on your team. But I can see that now also having the squad that he has makes him go into game more relaxed because of what the guys can give him, and you could see it today. But yeah, you feel it as an Arsenal fan. Sometimes when you're there, and maybe before, the 2 years before or last year, 3-1, we would have seen it out. Maybe we would have finished 3-2, bang, 4-1, and then we control the ball and we go back being in control of the game. So that's a plus. But I agree with Jamie. It's not so much about what the others are doing. It's in your hand. Just get on with it.
And I think the point about finishing in second place for 3 consecutive seasons is an interesting one, because sometimes, as much of an achievement as that might be, 3 seasons is quite a long time in football. So for that same-ish group of players to go again and to have the energy to go again, to have the focus to go again and find themselves in this position, is that impressive in itself?
It is, but you know what? I will take. You know, Bukayo has been there for a little while. You have guys that are just arrived, but it seems that they bought into what's happening. Sometimes it takes a bit of a moment to do that. But for me, when I see how Declan Rice plays, and how all those guys play, by the way, you know, we can talk about Nkapie, we can talk about everybody. You can see that there is something happening this year. Once again, that doesn't mean you're going to win the league, but the attitude of it is right there. So let's not, you know, mess it up. And I'm going to sleep well tonight.
Yeah,
with
I'm
you.
sure you will.